Well, we have Michael Green on the line, and Michael has a ton of experience with flipping houses. But Michael, I'm going to just throw it over to you right off the bat. Can you introduce yourself and we'll get the conversation going because I know I have a ton of questions for you.
Well, quick introduction. My name is Michael Green. Obviously, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I've been flipping houses about 11 years. To date, I've got over 1,000 houses flipped. I've, for many, many years, was really big into volume. And over the last couple years, I've been taking a very different approach. And I believe it's through wisdom is I've been scaling down the profit up. I'm really big now on, quality over quantity and really focusing on making more and doing less flips. I think the growth thing for a long time was really just kind of an ego thing. So now I'm realizing the ability to do 10 houses a year and make 40K and just bring in 300 plus $1,000 and, and have quality of life that matches with it, which is really important. For many years when I was scaling and doing crazy stuff, I totally did not have quality of life. I just had an insane business that I really enjoyed running, but no travel vacations, none of the awesome reasons we get in the real estate. So that's
Sure.
me in a nutshell. I'm kind of like a insane I love house flipping. I stay very focused, even though I love rentals. I love everything else. I have to kind of shut those things off because I believe in the one thing, Gary Keller. I love the book. I've read it about
Hmm.
5 times, and I still read it every 6 months because I do have a little ADD, and like everyone, I love to do a lot of different things. But I found my success has been in picking one thing and just really mastering it. And
Yeah.
11 years in, I still have so much to learn.
Sure. Well, like I told you before, when we started this call, a lot of our listeners are relatively new to real estate investing, and many of them are, they typically start in wholesaling or they're trying to make that extra money for the down payment on their next rental through flipping. What are some of those early lessons that somebody should be aware of when going into flipping?
Flipping like anything, there's really three main factors, but two of them most people focus on. So everyone talks about finding deals. That's the thing that really got me into it. It's the first thing I learned. And you definitely need a good way to find deals. You need to be able to talk to sellers. You got to have a good routine for that is successful, analyzing those deals correctly. But the second piece that very few people talk about, and I don't think is very sexy, but is really where most of the money gets lost in the flip, is dealing with contractors and being able to get the work done efficiently and fast. And this has been for me, my business took a complete 360 when I started learning to get work done cheaper, more efficiently, and really gain control of that. Because there's many years where I had the limiting belief, well, contractors just don't, they are who they are. Essentially, I was making
Hmm.
excuses for them. And once I got a coach who kind of challenged me on that and said, Mike, well, what if they weren't like that? And what would it take? And so I spent about 4 years now. I've been just figuring out like, okay, what would it be like to have contractors actually do what they say? Come in and work for very affordable prices, get done faster than most others, and not cry and complain all the time and not drive me crazy. I realized it was actually about 80% of my headaches and house flipping had more to do with the contractors than it was finding deals. Finding deals, once you get good at it and you have a good system for it, it's fairly easy, honestly. It's something that, you do have to study and learn. You're not just going to go do it right off the bat. But if you're going to the right people, the right sellers, you're building relationships, you're doing some of the core things that are really important, you'll find that you will have a steady flow of deals, especially if you don't need 100 of them a year and you're just looking to do 5 or 10 houses a year. But the contractor piece, it took me about 2 to 3 years of really figuring out how to gain abundance around that. And once I did, then the third part where a lot of money is made is on the back end and selling. So there's a
Hmm.
lot of mistakes I made over the history of being in this business where I'd list it for say 200 and get 200 and be really excited. And what I've learned in my I like to say in my wisdom, right? I'm still very new at this, even at 10 years, but I've learned that there's a lot of opportunity on the back end to sell these houses for considerably more than what you actually believed in the first place. They're creating a very competitive, almost auction type environment. We literally just put a house on the market 2 days ago, and right now had 36 showings, 9 offers, and right now we're 15K over list price, close to a $300,000 price point. In the middle of we've been on a shutdown for 7 days, so we do have. Luckily for us, they did consider construction and realtors to be essential, so people can still show homes. So we're not on a complete lockdown, but we are on a semi lockdown. So most of
Sure.
the roads are pretty clear right now. So we're very fortunate that's happening. But the thing about this is there's a lot of room to be made there, and you start compounding. Like, I love that you talk a lot about having like an automated way to get deals. It's something that I've listened to a few podcasts. I really love. It's a very important piece. There's a little bit of money going to be made there. There's a little bit of money going to be made with the contractors, and there's a little bit of money can be made on the back end when selling. And if you compound all that together, it's a lot of money. Right. It's
Hmm.
a difference in making 25K a flip and making 40K a flip, and now being able to do 7 to 10 houses a year instead of 20 when you ramp
Right.
up, and be able to make the same income, which means, it's a very simple business concept. The less overhead you have and the less work you have to put in to make money, profit margins are always going to be higher. So that's been
Mhm.
my focus for a while. And like a lot of people think I'm the scale guy, but I'm actually went from doing 150 houses a year, and I'm looking to do 30 in this next 2020.
Right. It's interesting that we're backtracked there for a second. It's interesting you talk about picking out your contractors, and we're starting to realize that it's much like finding a good property manager. When you have rentals, a good property manager could really make or break a property and the cash flow associated with it. I'm definitely discovering that with contractors and general contractors and everything else. What is your process on selecting or finding those team members? I'm going to call them team members because in the end, you really have to have a good working relationship with them.
I totally agree with that. Right now, one of my big focuses with everything going on out there is how to maintain a balanced, flipping business without shutting it completely down. And the main reason behind that, I mean, totally, I'm in a place where I could just shut it down for a couple months and see what happens. But I've got team members out there that I need to consider that really do what they say, and it's very difficult to get that together. So some of my thought process is, how do I keep them feeding their families
Hmm.
without me taking a huge amount of risk, finding that, striking that balance between the two. So I'm not one of the few people that'll be shutting down right now. I'm just trying to find a nice safe balance between the two. So, I'm not completely burning these bridges. So I believe in that. And the question you asked was, how do I find those guys? So first big change that I realized I had to make is when I really first started this and I was very new, because I didn't know everything about construction, my way of figuring out what something should cost or estimating a repair was getting multiple contractors out, getting 3 estimates, picking the middle one, or, don't take the lowest or highest, the stuff we've all been taught, like
Right.
over the years. And I realized, and I learned this from Home Depot and Lowe's, is I realized like big commercial companies, they don't really do it that way. And I really started taking some notes from how they run. Like if you were to work with like a, multi-billion-dollar commercial company, they create standardized pricing and they don't get estimates. They actually create the pricing for the unit of work that's being done. They understand the standard amount of time it should take. They understand the standard amount of money that should be paid for that, and that's it. So that, we really took this big shift from asking contractors what something costs to telling them what we'll pay. And
Mm.
that for me was like the biggest shift that you can make. And this is really applicable for landlords, flippers, whatever it might be, because you're obviously going to get your best rentals if they need some repairs, because they'll have a lot of baked in equity that you'll be able to get a better ROI on the back end, versus buying a turnkey. So you're always going to be able to, if you can get the construction done well, then that becomes an opportunity to make your rentals grow even faster and make more money on your flip so you can get more rentals. So this is really awesome all the way around. But so we start off with standardized pricing. Once we have standardized pricing, then it becomes all about filtering, right? If you
Mhm.
put an ad out for a contractor, you're going to get 20 responses, and of those 20 responses, just like if we were doing a mailing to motivated sellers,
Mhm.
18 or 19 of them aren't going to be a good fit. So I create a funnel where I do Craigslist ads, but then I run them through an application process, and I run them through a filtering system that literally weeds out the 18 that aren't going to follow or really going to be a good fit for my standardized pricing. Now I'm only talking to 2 or 3 people who are kind of on board before I ever get on the phone with them. And then on the phone, I'm actually filtering also, so because I think most of your time's wasted when you go meet people at the property.
Right.
I won't meet anyone until they basically have verbally agreed on the phone that we're all on the same page. And when they do, like let's say I get 5 guys out, 2 or 3 of them will get out there and be like, well, now I've seen it, it's all different. And now it's double. They got to go for, but we know that if 5, like 2 or 3 of them will be on the same page, and often we start to have abundance of people who understand how we do business, because for years it was always me asking the contractor how to do business, and now it's me saying, okay, here's how I do business, and if that's a good fit, then we're good to go. And I did truly learn that from like Home Depot and Lowe's. Like if a subcontractor works for Home Depot, they don't give Home Depot estimates. Home Depot basically says like, hey man, here's our price sheet, here's what we pay, right? And this is it. And we just, take it or leave it kind of thing. And you can do that even when you're new. So there's probably some people listening saying, well, of course, Mike, you can do that. You've been in the game a long time.
Mhm.
You can do it if it's your first house, as long as you understand it and you really take that emotional approach to it, right? That has to be your mindset around like how you're going to do business. Because the problem is when you give them control, contractors, as much as they are team members, they have a very big conflict of interest, right? I mean, the way they
Mhm.
make money is by giving us change orders, by charging us more than they should. They don't really have any reason to be fast and efficient if we pay them too much.
Mhm.
The pricing that's going to be sharp actually qualifies out slow people and gets to the people who are very efficient, who think more like a subcontractor, like I'm going to install 500 square foot of floor and I'm going to get paid $1.50 a foot. So for me to make money, I have to do that in 2 days with one other person.
Mhm.
And we can get people thinking that way, they tend to be a lot faster. It becomes easier for us because we're all on the same page. So it's
Sure.
easy for me to say, hey, Matt, you didn't do a great job, or Jack, right? And you didn't do a great job. So bottom line, you know what? This is where you need to be. So it's just really
Mhm.
simple, right? Real simple stuff.
Yeah. And as you get into this routine, I'm going to guess that you're pretty much working with the same contractors over and over again. They know that it becomes about a lot more predictable.
It becomes really predictable because there's so much insanity around working with contractors, and there's so many games that they like to play and manipulations they like to pull. This is something you're going to run into when you deal with contractors, period. It's so entrenched in the contractor's beliefs and mindset that if you don't have a system like this, it's nearly impossible to have a good experience with contractors in general. You almost have to get extremely lucky for that to happen. So yes, once they understand it, what I found is if you take a lot of energy and time to weed down to what we like to call like a 5-star contractor or an A+ contractor, the really good guy fits perfectly into our system. What we found is you'll put a lot of energy into hiring that one person, but once you get them, they do stay around. Most of my guys have been with me 5 or 6 years now. And what's even better, eight rock stars, no rock stars. So often they'll say, oh no, that guy sucks, but I got this other guy who's a great electrician. I'll refer him to you. And we find that like a lot of the work is front loaded, and then next thing you know, it kind of like we don't have to do much anymore on advertising, because if we ever need someone and someone falls out of our system, we basically can go to all the rock stars we currently have, and they generally will be able to refer someone to us. So it's, it started as a lot of work a couple years ago when we were changing this all around, but now it's gotten down to being a very congruent ecosystem where we just keep pulling from the ecosystem and keeping everything very balanced.
Sure. When you're going through this process of trying to find these contractors, I'm going to guess that you've had experience where you've decided or realized pretty early that you might have the wrong contractor on the job. What are some of those red flags, and how did you approach those contractors and just to break the ties?
So probably one of the big things, right, is we have to start off on the right foot. We have to have a system that's going to help us, like a control, right? When you think of
Hmm.
bookkeeping or anything, you need controls, things that are going to be like, okay, it's good, but it's a green light or red light right now. So for us, how we do that is I've moved away from hiring GCs and giving them all the work, because it's really complex to know if, where they are as far as milestones. It's very difficult to break down. You end up investing in a crazy amount of energy into people before you know if they're even any good. So what we do instead is we line item everything out. And when someone new comes in, they get a small line item. And they essentially
Sure.
get an on the job interview, is what we call it. So it might be like, hey, do this $1,000 job that takes a day or two, and they knock that out. They do a good job, they move on. They get a second job, a third job. Then we'll start giving them 2 or 3 jobs at a time. Once they've done a flip or two and they really have proven to be a good quality person, then we might go, we're like, hey, you get 80% of the line items that you're qualified to do, and they get a little more freedom there. But we don't give them trust until they've earned it. That was my big mistake in the past. Is somebody would have the title general contractor or contractor, and I would just assume trust to them, and they had not earned it. And I realized that was a mistake. Probably in life, in many areas, we tend to trust people beyond what we should.
Hmm. How do you, without a general contractor, then how do you manage the workflow? When the flooring guy goes in, when how do you manage that? Typically a general contractor handle that's a big part of their job.
Yeah, it is. So what we do, and this is what we initially do, and when someone's really new for me, what I find to be the best way is for them to be their own GC. But when I say that, I want to be clear that you're not going to manage every little piece of it. But the things I believe that you should be and know exactly how to do, you should be able to walk in a house and know what things should cost. You should be able to walk in a house and determine what the design's going to be that's going to make it sell for the most. The layout of it, and also what designs are going to take for you to compete, the price, right? You want to be the architect of everything that's going to be happening and not the GC. So for many years, I would lean lean on GCs to tell me those important pieces of my business. And it made me very unpredictable. So like some houses would sell, some wouldn't, because I was just not, I found that I'm better suited to make those choices on each house. So there's a little bit of work that I do on every house. When I buy it, I'm the one doing the line items. I'm the one going in and deciding how to lay it out. And so at some level, I become the GC. Now, what is very easily given out, and what I like to call my GCs are more like assistant GCs, because I feel like I'm truly the GC, but I am giving them a lot of the work. So once I get someone I trust and like, and they're very reliable, then I'll
Mhm.
start delegating work off to them, like calling or making sure people have come and done the work. And so I do actually keep my thumb on the pulse of what's going on, because I don't think there's any other way to truly have control over contractors. And one of the biggest areas of money that's kind of flowing in and out in a flip is going to be in your construction. So it makes sense for me when you're newer, especially, to have a really good, good understanding of where the money's going, how it's being spent. You got to really keep your eye on it. We're even going like insanely crazy now, where I'm changing everything in my books to looking like every little detail of job costing, so that I can tighten that up even more, because, across doing like 10 flips at a time, there's probably a tremendous amount. I'm not going to tell you there's probably, I've already found out, and just in the last month or two, there's a lot of money that I could be saving over a year, just by getting that even more involved. So I don't really believe in the whole turnkey, just, hey, here you go, contractor, here's 30K, let me know when you're done. Personally, I haven't found a lot of people that have made that highly successful. I mean,
Mhm.
and maybe for rentals, it works a little better if you're doing like 10 or 15K. But if you are doing a full scale renovation, then know that there's a lot of money going in and out, and that you really want to have an understanding of what's going on, because when you don't, it opens the door for contractors to kind of, just tell you stuff. And
Right.
then you really are at risk of maybe spending an extra 10 or 20K. And the compounding effect of that no one talks about, if you, like, let's just say you do a house and it's you cost you 70K, but it cost me 60, your offer is going to generally be 10K lower in a very competitive environment, which we're actually still seeing even with everything going on.
Mhm.
You're going to lose, and it's going to be harder for you to get deals. And then what you're going to do as another, subsequent, thing you're going to try to do, you're going to say, oh, well, we have to do more marketing or more expensive stuff. And so I'm actually, like, last year did over 20 some deals off the MLS, because I am competitive enough by cutting my costs down on my renovations and listing my own properties as a realtor and cutting that cost. I'm able to go in and actually buy right off the MLS and average 39K a deal, price points around like 225 to 275, which personally I would do all day long. And I'm averaging about 60K on my renovations, just to give you a feel of kind of like, it's going to be a little different for every market. Obviously, some markets 20 or 30K is a standard. We're about 60 to 65K here in Maryland, because houses are a little bit older.
Sure. So, could we talk a little bit about like some of those things that you've found then as you're tightening up your and getting more control over the flipping? Like, what were some of those multipliers or savings that you found that really made a big difference? You mentioned that you started off making like 20,000 a flip, and now it's closing in on closer to 40,000. That's 100% increase. Like, what were some of those line items that you discovered were the big hitters? I'm sure you had discovered a few of them there.
Yeah, there's some that people aren't getting rich on, and there's others that they are. So I'll give you a great example of something me and a lot of my students are doing right now. For years, I would pay 5 to 6K to waterproof a basement that maybe is like 100 linear foot on average. And that was about 5 or 6K I would pay for that, and I gladly paid that. We're finding right now that we can actually buy the materials and hire someone for 2K to do the labor. Materials are running about 1,200, so now I'm getting that done for 3,200, saving myself just a couple grand on that one line item. Now, you really
Sure.
think about how, like, you can do that across the board. Now, where we're not finding we're able to save big chunks of money is electric, plumbing, and HVAC, but we were already doing that very affordably. So for me, like, if I was to go in a house and put ducts and an HVAC unit, it cost me about 6,000 to 6,500, which we're finding is about as cheap as you can get it done. A
Hmm.
lot of other investors are paying about 8,000 for that. So when you start thinking, okay, there's 1,500 bucks there, there's another 2 grand on the waterproofing. It's just not overpaying. It's so easy to get a belief. If you go and talk to 5 electricians, they're going to all tell you 8 to 10. Some are going to tell you 15K even. And when they start telling you those numbers, 8K sounds cheap. So it
Hmm.
is about you understanding what the actual most affordable price someone can do it for. So personally, we love to break down, like, the reason we understand plan that HVAC can be done for say 6,500 is, the materials run around 3,000 to 3,500, and it takes them 3 days to rough it in and get ducts in and all that, and it's about $1,000 a day roughly. So we look at it
Sure.
like, okay, two guys, $1,000 a day, that's very good pay. But does
Hmm.
that mean that every HVAC guy is going to understand that? No, you're going to have to do the funnel, and you're going to have to go through 18 people and weed them out and get to the two people who understand how to work with house flippers. And if you're able to do that across the board, then you're going to really save a lot of money. Because I mean, look, I pay $2,000 to paint a house labor. And that's going to be a house that's about 13 to 1,500 square foot, usually has a basement. I know people pay 2,700 to do that. It's
Hmm.
$700. Again, these don't sound like big numbers, but when you start to multiply them, it's the difference. And again, me doing something for 60 and someone else who's not tightening those numbers down, doing it for 70 or 75, which gives me like a 15K advantage just on the construction. Then obviously I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and I've seen a lot of what you talk about. And it's a lot about like, getting good deals. Well, if you can get a deal for 5K cheaper, that's going to really tighten things up and multiply for you. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a multiplier for sure. So 5K there, 10K on the construction. Then on the back end, if you create a really strong environment where you're literally just getting another 5 or 10K, that's how I went from 20K to 40K. It took me about 3 years of tightening all these things up, but and everything's been really good. And I did it in a time where everyone else's profits were going down. Mine were actually going up, because we all think that we're held to what is, but the reality is there's a lot of room to make shifts and changes in the house flipping, especially around construction, buying. You get just a little bit better at talking to sellers. Like
Hmm.
another big shift we made is we used to be 15, 20 minutes with motivated sellers. I now book 2 hours to sit with them. And if they'll talk to me for 2 hours, I will literally sit with them for 2 hours, because leads are expensive to generate right now,
Hmm.
and we have to respect them at a much higher level. So I now realize the only advantage I really have over everyone else is my willingness to sit there and talk about their grandchildren, the house, anything, to where now they're creating this emotional connection and they want to work with me. So, at some
Hmm.
level, if someone else comes in and offers 10K more, I at least get a phone call saying, Mike, I really want to work with you. Could you at least match this? And many times we find that we don't even need to match it to get the deal. We can be like, hey, we can get within a couple grand, and
Right.
they trust us so much that they would want to work with us. And then obviously when you build trust like that, it goes without saying that you actually have to honor that trust and do what you say, because it's a pretty big thing in life. And I think it's just a good character piece for anything you do in life. But so there's a really big way that you can start winning more deals for me, and that's what's been working for me. I
Hmm.
went from a half hour because 5 years ago we had a lot of leads, so it was all about how to manage all those leads, and now we have less leads, and it's all about how to close the same amount of deals with less leads.
Sure. With the whole coronavirus and everything that's going on right now, how has that changed uh, finding those deals? What are you doing anything different? And has
Well,
it
so
slowed
right,
down your renovations at all? I mean, I'm just going to pile on that one.
I mean, two great questions. Right now, we're not seeing any change. So I'll tell you what we have seen, and I'll give you an explanation why, because it didn't make a lot of sense. We've actually seen an uptick in showings and offers, and which made my brain not work, because I'm like, I'm very logical, I'm very big
Right.
analyzer, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Why would that be the case? Like, we're going through something pretty big right now. Why would there be an uptick? Well, we found out locally is we already had an inventory crisis in the Maryland, D.C. area, and most of the country has had somewhat of an inventory crisis. Well, inventory has shot down, and we've lost inventory, because if you look at 100 houses on the market,
Hmm.
95 of those houses are homeowners selling their home, right? And
Right.
five of them are flips, vacant flips. Now, what's happening, we're seeing at a pretty high rate, is that homeowners are taking their houses off the market right now because they're stuck in home, and they don't want people running through their house all day long and, spreading
Right.
disease. It's inconvenient. Maybe it's not the disease. Maybe they just don't, because they're home now and they're not working. So we're seeing a lot of people take their listings off the market temporarily, meaning that we still got a lot of buyers out there, people that are essential, that actually have even more job security in what's going on right now. And those people are rampantly trying to buy, and that there's even less inventory today than there was 3 weeks ago, because how many houses have come off the market. So like I said, we just we've sold 4 houses in the last 10 days, and all of those went for multiple offers. Like, I think probably got 6 on one, and everything was beyond six, and tremendous amounts of showings and stuff. So that's still going pretty well. So I feel like the selling piece is going well. The construction has not been held up yet. One of my concerns for the future would be supply. Will we be able to get everything we need? So I'm already kind of thinking in advance. Well, what could like tighten up. We work with a guy who does cabinets, and I believe he gets those from China. I can't
Mhm.
imagine that's not going to be interrupted. So we're trying to make sure
Right.
we're a little ahead of the game in getting materials. We're not waiting to most time when you're busy, you wait the last minute. So we're trying to get everything like a week or two in advance, just to make sure that, we do the material be there when it's time, or at least we'll have some room if it takes an extra week or two to get it, because that definitely could be a very real thing in the future. I don't think it's to the point where it's going to shut the industry down. Again, a lot of these things are just going to be about maneuvering and doing things a little differently and a little bit better.
Right. So what have you done differently when you're talking to motivated sellers then?
So motivated sellers right now, I would say that the change has been more in me, right? When 3 weeks ago we were in a highly competitive market, and I would say I was very competitive in trying to win deals. So sometimes we stretch a little bit when we want to win. I might
Mhm.
even go as far as saying I was a motivated buyer because it was hard
Right.
to get deals. I am not a motivated buyer right now. So I think one of the natural changes going to happen is I'm going to start talking to sellers a little more qualifying. I'm going to be like,
Mhm.
hey, I don't need the deal right now. We got a lot going on. So anytime you take that position in any market, you're going to get a better deal. It's all about, like, most of the stuff happens with us versus with them. If we're talking to someone like we don't need them, they tend to come towards us,
Mhm.
versus when they're like, yeah, man, we really could do this for you. Let's make this happen. They tend to move away from us. So I try to get myself in that mindset when things are really good, but it's not always easy. I think
Right.
it's very easy right now, right? I think we're all coming from a place of like, we don't really need a house right now unless the deal makes sense. So when I'm talking to motivated sellers, I am looking for, a little bit of a discount. I think I'm naturally going to get it because I'm not desperate to buy a deal right now. And I don't have any fear that in 30 days there won't be plenty of opportunity. And knowing that has put me in a very abundant mindset, where I'm buying stuff, but I'm not buying it insanely cheap, because in 2008, we only seen like 1% a month where we were, is what we've seen. So, and I'm usually in and out 4 to 6 months. So we would have a calculator that in eight, when we were flipping, we literally would just take like 6% off of whatever the ARV was at that point, and it worked out really well. We were able to sell plenty of houses, really grow our business in 2008, 9, and 10, when everyone else was kind of falling apart. We had no issue doing that because of the fact we were buying with like a slight discount. So I'm doing something very similar to that now. I don't know that it's going to go down 6% in the next 6 months, but I do know that if I'm talking to a motivated seller, they totally have the belief that it might. So
Mhm.
that's not me sounding like a goofball when I say that. I think
Right.
most people are going to buy into that. And I like that I'll be buying based on something that could happen. And then I feel like I'm protected if it does happen. But if it doesn't happen and maybe the market, tightens up faster than we thought, because it has not dropped at all. It's actually been going up as we speak. So we haven't seen any data to suggest that, at least here in Maryland. So no, anything I'm talking about, I am talking about my niche here in Maryland. That might be very
Mhm.
different in California, any other state. So definitely take this advice and just run it through the filter where you are, what situation you're in. But here in Maryland, it has not went down. So I think we have like the opportunity to create this arbitrage right now of, essentially, we can buy cheaper, and potentially on the back end, we won't even be selling cheaper. So we can make even more money right now. And if it does go down, we'll be in about the same position.
Mhm. You're talking about the selling. I'd like to spend a little time on that because you have a different way of handling that too. Earlier, you mentioned basically being in more of an auction situation and more of a competitive when it comes to fielding those deals. Can you talk to how you've positioned your marketing and when it comes to the selling side to achieve that?
So for a long time, I tried to get my realtor to do this. I didn't become a realtor because I was greedy and trying to save commissions. I became a realtor because I couldn't get my realtor to really run the optimal environment. For whatever reason, they have so much junk that's been, cooked into their brains by their brokers and everyone else,
Mhm.
that they like to use the term everything. Well, that's illegal, or it's not right, or it's not ethical. Like, I feel like, in my opinion, and I've been backed up by many people at this, is that getting the most money for your client, whether that's you or someone else, is always your number one objective, as long as you're doing it honestly and ethically. And we totally do
Right.
that. But they just don't, they're very used to their normal way. So what we do is, there's a couple steps to really getting a house to sell and get very insane on the back end. Obviously, on the front side, we're picking the right homes, right? There's going to be homes that have a bigger buyer pool than other homes. So for us here in Maryland, the perfect home that seems to have a really large buyer pool would be the first time home buyer house, somewhere between like 1,000 to 1,500 square feet. Finished basements are really big, and price point around like 200 to 300K. So we know that if we have that house with a decent yard in a good area that's local to the Beltway, and can get to DC, Baltimore very easily, that home, really, there's no economy that home doesn't sell in, right? And
Mhm.
it's just going to sell in every economy economy. It's a very recession proof house. The houses that we stay away from are going to be, luxury homes, vacation homes, things like that, because they do go up and down with the economy quite a bit. So first of all, we're picking the right house, the house that has like 80% buyer's pool, because there's other houses might have 10%. There is someone you can sell it to, but you really want to have the lion's share of the buyer's pool, knowing that there's so many of the people that need these homes, you'll never have to worry about good economy, bad economy, whatever it is. So we focus on that first. Secondarily, the next thing we really focus on to make it really insane on the back end for the sale is making sure we have like that perfect layout. I think for me, what's worked really well is when you walk in a home, if it's got that great, what we call great room look, you walk in, you can see from front to back, it's living room, dining room, kitchen, it's all together. There's an island in the house. It's a
Mhm.
gourmet kitchen, it just looks really nice. And then obviously it has a master suite. If we can squeeze that into the very small square footage, we're doing really good. So most of our houses will, kind of the tail of the tape is most of them are like 4 3s. They generally be 3 2 above grade, 1 1 in the basement, master suite, meaning at least 12 by 15 with a nice closet, nice bathroom, and then the great room on the first floor, finished basement. That house, if we can squeeze that into 1,000 to 1,500 square feet, there's no one who doesn't want that, right? No, even if
Mhm.
someone is just a couple, they're excited to have 4 3 because they feel like in the future we could use these rooms or do whatever. Maybe they want to
Right.
Airbnb some stuff to make some extra money, or just whatever, right? They feel like they have options and they don't have any problem reselling it later. So we always go for layout as being the second big thing on the backside, and then also layout and design. So we are doing a lot of little design things. So I'll kind of walk you through that because I think it's really valuable for the beginners. When I was new to this, everything was like tan, white cabinets, brown cabinets, tan walls, just real simple, no staging. Now we're going a little bit like, the gray, a little more modern, nice granites, a little bit nicer without spending too much money. But we
Mhm.
are making sure that the house has some what we call like accent features. So we might put up one wall where we, do some trim around it, paint it a different color. Those kind of things go a long ways. And most of the time they cost a couple $100. So they're very minuscule as far as the cost of it, but it
Mhm.
looks like you've put a lot of attention into your flip, which I think creates an emotional buyer because like right now I went from flipping houses logically saying, okay, logically, this is a good deal and this will fit right into the market, to adding
Mhm.
maybe a couple $1,000 in upgrades that will make people see it and pick with their heart. Because if I can get someone out of their head and get them thinking with their heart, that's a much greater offer price. Like that's always my mission is to get 5 to 7 offers and then find the person in the 5 to 7 offers who's like completely heart based and saying like, I have to have this. This is my home. That doesn't happen when you put like what I call like a C plus property that's just nice, but not like over the top nice. Now, I want to be very clear that over the top nice does not mean like going out and buying like Italian granite that costs, $2,000 a foot. This is all about buying the things that look expensive. It's about putting, finding ways to make your house look amazing on the cheap, right? Like Design on a Dime. I used to love that show. They like come in and make something look awesome for $500. So it does require a lot of that, but it's just putting some time and energy into making your house be like one step better than your competition without spending a bunch of money. But it looks like you overspent. So when
Mhm.
you do that and then the last piece of it that pulls it all together is if things are selling for $299, we're generally going to put it on for like $289. So we have a better laid out house, better design house. It's sharp priced, right? Really sharply priced. It essentially guarantees that almost every single house I put on will literally within a few days have offers, and within like 3 to 5 days we'll have multiple offers. And when we get in that multiple offer situation, that's the environment that I can work magic. If I'm on the market 30 days and I get one offer, I don't care how good you are, how good of a negotiator. You can use every
Mhm.
technique in the world, but you're coming from a place of scarcity versus abundance. So like none
Right.
of those things work when you're coming from scarcity. So for me, I have to get in abundance to be the best version of myself. That usually happens at least with having a couple offers. So if I got a couple offers, then I'm not so worried that if I push hard on offer one, I know I got offer three to back that up. So I'm not in a place where I'm so worried about maybe running the person off. And when I come from that place of having the freedom of pushing people, I tend to get one or two people out of that mix to jump out and pay considerably more. And I get to pick the best buyer. So like right now, I'm really focusing on like, what is your job? And if it's
Mhm.
government, it's essential. I'm really, really excited about that. If it's something that I think might be a problem in the next couple months, I'm kind of staying away from those types of people because, they're the type of people that could have a job change in the next 30 days before we get the settlement.
Right. Right. Well, this has been a ton of great information, and as I was trying to promise you, I'd try to keep it, control the time on you a little bit. I have a feeling we could have spent a lot longer, but I do understand you have a podcast of your own where if people wanted to get more information and learn from you, where would they find you, and where can they get more information?
Probably the best place is to go to my website, which is theflipfactor.net. And we have, to go to the podcast tab. We have all the podcasts on there. It's an easy way to, you don't have to have a certain iTunes player or anything. If you go there, we put every podcast on, and I talk about all these subjects freely, right? And I'm very much like you. I want to give a lot of great content. So this is valuable stuff. And we literally just completed like a 15 episode contractor. We call it Cracking the Contractor Code. And we've
Oh,
just been
awesome.
talking about how to deal with contractors, knowing like it's the biggest thing that I get from any of my students, any of my friends, my peers. It's like freaking contractors drive me crazy. So if you want to learn more about that, that's the best place to find me. Also, if you go and look up the Flip Factor podcast on iTunes, anywhere else, we're out there too.
So, well, thank you so much for your time. This was awesome, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. Have a great day, man. Thank you.
Thank you.